Welcome to the Small Giants Fishbowl. This topic is how to bring transparency and accountability to career trajectory and raises. In this fishbowl, Karen Clark Cole, CEO and founder of Blinks UX, and Brigitt Rains, Director of Operations, will share how they developed an internal system to make career trajectory, promotions, and asking for raises transparent and easy in their organization. Okay, here we go.
First up, in the background story is probably 4 years ago. It was coming up on annual review time in the company, and I became more and more dissatisfied with the process because the managers were not looking forward to filling out documents, reporting on their the people that they were managing over the last year, when there were things like they didn't know where to find the documents, they didn't know which one to use. Was we pull up last year's, we look at it, you quickly get a recap of what happened last year, but can't remember what happened in between them. The goals you could just sort of save and repeat because they hadn't changed, nobody had done them because nobody had looked at the document. And the same story was happening for the employees who were getting ready to fill in their annual review forms. So in the years prior, we had spent a lot of time fine-tuning the review form so that it was better, but it was only marginally better because I was seeing the same results. Is that at the beginning of the review cycle, everyone would pull up the form, and generally they're doing this a couple of hours before their review meeting, maybe a day before, and the whole thing just felt meaningless and without any value to me. And so, and everybody felt the same way. So the first thing that we did was ditch it. So we had a year with no annual reviews, there were no forms, everybody thought it was fantastic, we were free and easy. And then as the year progressed, we were realizing that nobody was actually getting any feedback, nobody felt like they had any guidance, and there was no sort of formal process for really growing in your career and understanding how you're doing. And so we realized that probably ditching it had gone too far, and so we needed to come back somewhere in the middle. So in doing this, I had searching high and low to find a tool that we could buy and implement that would do more than just produce a form that was documenting somebody's progress and sort of career path throughout the year. What I really wanted was something that showed cause and effect, and so it could show you the different things that had happened throughout the year and show you how they were connected. So if you were doing really well on a project and all of a sudden you're on budget, you're on time, the quality is high, you're getting great feedback from clients, good net promoter score, all these kind of things that we're looking at as consultants in terms of how are we serving our clients, those things are really important, and at the end of the day, that's our main metric. So how do we bring that layer into somebody's annual performance review? How do we bring in things like, are they getting feedback from their colleagues? Are they, how are they doing in the workplace on the teams that they're on internally? And then how are they doing for professional development? So if somebody, the cause and effect sort of comes into play, for example, is if somebody went to a great conference or read a great book and all of a sudden their work product is better and the quality of their projects is higher and they're getting great feedback, I want to be able to correlate that so we know we can do more of this, and the vice versa. If somebody's performance is going down, we need to know why. Is it because somebody's they're overbooked? It may be that they're uninspired, maybe that they don't have the right skill level, or maybe they just broke their arm and they actually couldn't type, and so their performance has gone down because they're just literally slow because they've had an injury. What I was seeing is that a year later, people actually couldn't remember that they had broken their arm, or what went well or what didn't go well. And so it seemed like it would be very hard to know what to do more of or what to do less of if we didn't understand the cause and effect. So I wanted this tool that I was looking for to be able to capture these kind of things and then spit out a report, so that at the end of the year or once a month or once a quarter, when you're meeting with your manager on a regular basis, you can just pull up this data and it will just tell you what's going on. It'll show you where the correlations are. And then when you see something that's interesting, either really positive or really negative, you can drill down into that and then find out what's really going on. And so, naturally we couldn't find it anywhere. And so being a software design company, I thought, well, we're going to design our own. And so we did, and that it took years and years. Unfortunately, we work really efficiently and quickly for clients, but for our own selves, it took quite a long time. And so this has really been in the makes for about 4 years, and we've been using it internally as an actual live system that collects data for about 2 years at that point. And one of the other things that we were sort of started rolling into this, and we started gathering requirements of like, what are the other things that matter, you know, for somebody's professional development and sort of overall health in the company. It's things like, how do they get a raise, and how does a manager justify giving somebody a raise? And then sort of along with that, other things that I was seeing is people would come to me and say that they wanted a raise and that they had never had a raise in the 2 years that they'd been here, or whatever the time was. And I was astounded by that. And so, you know, that seemed terrible. And so when I went back and actually looked at the data that I would have to pull from the finance department, so it was a multi-step process. I would have to go get a spreadsheet, look up the data. It took quite some time. And very manual. I realized they'd actually had 2 raises over the course of that time, but they had forgotten. So when I let them know, they're like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I don't have that written down anywhere. I couldn't remember. And so that became a real problem for me, is that people didn't have awareness of their own comp increases. And as well as for promotions, new titles, those kind of things, there was no real way for an individual to track their own progress through company. And so the part of it is also, when sort of jumping to the end of it, when a manager can give you a real justification for somebody getting a raise, all of a sudden the data is what drives it. And so what and Brigitt will talk more about this, but what we wanted to get to is a point where I could look at it. The GrowTool would almost ring a bell when somebody had accomplished all of the skills required to complete a level that they're at and move to the next level, and automatically get a promotion, get a raise, because they're in a new salary range for each level. So I'm sort of jumping ahead there, but that's what we ended up doing, is in order to really justify a raise using data, we need to be measuring things. And so we realized what we need to measure are skills and developments. And so we spent a good year going through and deciding, how do you define somebody at a level 1, level 2, level 3? Let's say project management, there we have 3, 4 levels here. We actually have 5 levels here. And in each of the level, we have different expectations for what we want people to do and accomplish and be responsible for in those levels. And it includes things like skills development, thought leadership, and consulting for most of our people here, because we're a consulting agency or consulting firm. And but defining the actual skills in each of those areas took a lot of time and a lot of research. And again, Brigitt and Rick will talk about that. So long story short, we bundled all these things into a tool, and we just started using it internally. And it also captures a place for managers to have their monthly review meetings. And so we mandated that managers need to check in with their people once a month, and they need to be asking sort of 3 or 4 main questions, so that at the end of the year, we call it now a year in review process. And what that is it's really a celebration of the work that they've done throughout the year. They print out the timeline, they look at all of the different aspects of their work life. And in some cases, we encourage them to incorporate their personal life, things like broken arm, go on a trip, things that might affect their work, which is largely, you know, if you think about people as their one body, what's your personal life and your work life, they're completely integrated. And so the more we can get people to put in data about their whole life being, then it helps understand their performance. If somebody's had a death in the family, it may very well hinder their project performance, but it's not something that's an issue that we need to worry about as a company. Their skills are fine, they're performing their work fine, but they've had a hard life event. And so that's just something, when we look at the data, we're like, yep, nothing to do there, we don't need to worry, we hope it doesn't happen again, and for their sake. But there's no performance management plan or any kind of review plan that needs to be put in place. So then jumping to the monthly meetings, and then so the managers meet with their people once a month. They're going through a set of questions that are getting at, how are you doing? Do you need help? And these kind of things. And then they're working with them to set goals one at a time. And so what we really wanted to do is, because I really believe that you can only do one thing at a time. And so if they have one goal that's active, that's the goal they're focused on. They can have a bunch of goals in the queue that they want to work on later, but only one active goal. And this way, the hope is that they actually accomplish it in that year rather than having 5 on the list and none of them get done. And so a goal may be to move to the next level. So somebody really wants a promotion within their current job. And so what they're doing within that goal is completing a whole bunch of skills that are required to get to the next level. And so they're working with their manager on these monthly meetings. And it's great for the managers because all of a sudden they have an actual plan of how to help these people. They know what to do to help them accelerate in their career and get them to the next level. And it's working through these different skills. And so they give them different ideas for how to complete it. They give them, things, tasks to focus on, ways to accomplish the skill. And then once they've completed it, then the manager approves it, and then they get a check mark in the GrowTool. And then once they've completed all of the skills at that level, they literally move to the next level and they automatically get a promotion and they move into a new pay scale. That doesn't prevent somebody from asking for a raise at any time. They can still do that, but this is more of an automatic, you've earned it, you get it kind of system. I'm going to jump forward a little bit because we have some screenshots of this, so I'll show you what these things look like. So this is the actual homepage of the GrowTool, and you can see there's different modules here. So this is where you can go in and see how many raises you've got. You can see what your starting salary was, where you're at now, how many promotions you've had along the way, anything like that. If you've got an increase in vacation, that will all show up here. And this is private only to the user, and so there's some other modules which are shared with your manager, and then we also have some public modules which we encourage people to share with the whole company. And we'll come back to some of these. This is a quick shot of the timeline, and so you can see some of the things that are on here. We've got, there's a skill that's been completed. This is the name of the skill and the duration that it took to complete it. This isn't completely accurate in that the skill would normally be shorter, but this is some compiled data we have here. Here's some goals that were completed. One's in progress, you can tell by the color. And then these are check-ins. So these are monthly check-ins, right, Brigitte? And then this is an event. And so we ask people to record the impact of an event that they went to. And then these are different feedbacks. And so you can actually forward feedback that you get from a client or a colleague into the system, and the system records it, and then you tag it, and you can connect it to a project, to a goal, to all kinds of different things, so that you can search in the actual tool, and you could come up with, show me all the feedback related to a certain project, or related to in April, or a time period, or different areas like that. And so this is showing you you can look at this by month, you can look at it by year, and it shows you these are the different kinds of things that are in here that it's tracking. These ones aren't developed yet. This is still in development, by the way. We've got goals, skills. So what this was doing is allowing employees and managers to have a really clear understanding of their place, their responsibilities, what's expected of them. And so when people understand what's expected of them at work, and Rick can talk a little bit more about this, then what happens is they're able to perform better because they know what they're supposed to do. So when people come into work and they have a really clear job description, they can get busy going to work because they know what they're supposed to be doing. And what's shocking to me is that we found out, we also did a cultural survey across the company around the same time as this, and it measures things like, how are we doing as a company for clarity? Do people understand what's expected of them? Do they understand their jobs? Do they know how to get promotions, raises, these kind of things? And what we found is, well, I thought, this is great. We have a really open culture. I'm really transparent, and we have foster entrepreneurship here. We encourage people to lead if they're interested in, have a little bit of a free rein kind of environment. And the downside of that is people were lost. They really needed structure and guidance, and they needed a clear understanding of what was expected of them every day when they come to work on the project. And so we've taken this, really quite far since then. And at every new project, we define in a detailed way the roles and responsibilities for people on the team at the beginning of every meeting. And so for one project, it may be different than another, and or maybe the same, but we're just going through it over and over and over to make sure that everyone is clear. So this is showing the different levels, and so you can see that for a project manager, for example, these are the skills. You can see that this person has completed all the skills up to level 3, and they're currently in level 4. And so down here, there's more descriptions, and when you click on one of the skills, it comes up and it gives you the detail of what's, and you hover over it, it gives it a name. This is just a screenshot. And then you click on it, it gives you the details for what's needed to accomplish it. Quickly going back to this page, so this is what the manager check-in looks like. So you basically have a summary of what you talked about. There's action items. This is a shared screen for you and the employee. They can add notes, and then there's also a private area. This is a great way for a manager to track sort of what we talked about at the last meeting, what we're going to talk about at the next meeting. This is that the tree essentially, and so it goes down, or it starts at the bottom. There's an actual flower pot, and it shows your start date. And this is giving you your summary at the top. Sometimes it's not accurate, so maybe it is. This is the cultural framework. So as a part of all of this, and this is where I worked closely with Rick, and he can talk a little more about it, is trying to understand, okay, so we need to have more clarity around how people are measured and evaluated and what's expected of them. But then we also need to understand what drives people to work hard, to be happy, to want to come to work every day, have a meaningful job and a life, really. If you think about the amount of time that people spend at work, it's the majority of their lives. And so it's, something that's of great interest to me. If I think about, a lot of the return on values project that Small Giants is connected with, and you think about values-driven leadership, at the end of the day, it really does hit the bottom line. And so I became very interested in understanding how do you create a thriving culture in a workplace that's repeatable and is sustainable. And the only way, we're a growing company, and the only way for us to be able to grow this kind of mentality is to be able to, describe it, speak about it, and measure it. And so, so I started working with Marigold, and we figured out, okay, so these are some of the things, and when I've chosen 6 to focus on, there's more than 6. But these are things that are known to allow people to really feel valued, to feel that they're productive, and ultimately thriving. And if those things are in place, the result is a positive work environment and a happy place where people are smiling and want to be here. And those are the kind of usually the things people talk about when they talk about a great culture. They see people playing ping pong and drinking beer after work. Well, that's not what actually causes a thriving culture, but that's one of the great side effects, is creating this community environment where people actually want to spend time together. And so I wanted to go back to the root of it, though, and find out, look, what are the things that we need to be measuring as a company and really paying close attention to. And so there's 6 that we've chosen to focus on. And what we do is we talk about these constantly. We level up giving people rewards and doing high fives and thanking people throughout the company for a job well done. And we always map it to these 6 pillars. Our managers use these in their monthly meetings. They talk about different aspects of how's the commitment on your team, on your current project. Is everyone helping each other? We talk about responsibility, and that do people know what's expected of them on the project and as a whole in their job? An important one on here is standards. And so we make, and all of these are actually fantastic in our interview process. So we go through all of these things in an interview and make sure that we've got all the boxes checked, that somebody understands what we expect as a company before they join on. And when we talk about standards, the standards are very high. And, you know, we come here every day to Blink and we work hard, and great work and, you know, heavy lifting and hard thinking is expected of everybody. And that's the standard. And then what happens is that feeds into team commitment. So if you're on a project team and you know that everyone on your team is working hard and their standards are high, then all of a sudden that engine really works well together. And if there's somebody on that team who's not meeting the standards and they're really not performing, it's actually the team members who are the loudest to complain. It's not management anymore. So that's a great thing for me to watch, to see it's actually happening, you know, at the lowest, highest levels in the middle of the company, with people really taking this stuff seriously. Part of this also is, you know, so what you know, the outcome of this also is the clarity side of it. And so this isn't clarity in me talking about, you know, what the company's doing or how our financials are. This is more clarity around, do people know what they're supposed to do when they get to work? So this is, again, going into the levels and the job description and those kind of things. Rewards are, you know, for us, we talk about the moving up the levels and getting a promotion and a raise. Those are some ways to do rewards. We have lots of other ways in here of giving feedback and letting the company vote for people doing great things. When people are meeting, you know, they have an example connected with these pillars in particular. We do monthly bonuses and different fun things like that. The feedback is one of the things that it seems like the most basic, and it's actually one of the hardest to implement, is to get people in a company to actually give feedback and ask for feedback. And there's a ratio of a 5-to-1 ratio of 5 positive to 1 constructive or negative feedback. And if we can only just get people in the company, and it's still something that we struggle with, to even just go around giving 5 positive feedbacks a day, it feels like a lot if you're not used to doing that. And so if you walk by somebody and you're thinking, oh, I really liked how they helped me with this or they did that thing, I'm encouraging people to say it out loud. And the best way to do this is to have the leadership team and the managers modeling it. But when it happens, all of a sudden you start building this trust and this rapport with the people on your team and the people in the company with each other, that, wow, people do really respect the work that I'm doing and they do value my contributions. And so if you start laying that base down, when there is something that's not going well, you generally have people's trust and they're willing to listen and it becomes more constructive. And so that's something that it's really, that has the highest impact and it's the quickest to change and it's one of the hardest to do. So we've really worked a lot on that. So that's, and then there's about 100,000 other things, but that's sort of the general high level of what we're doing here. And, you know, it's been several years and it's really, it's made a big difference. It's helped everyone, you know, really understand why they're here and what they're doing, what their purpose is. And, you know, as a result, you know, generally people come into the office and they think, you know, wow, this place has a great energy. And while it may be hard for people to explain it or understand it, they definitely feel it. And so that's the great outcome of it all. So I'm going to pass it over to Brigitt here, and she's going to talk quickly about how we actually went about developing the levels and the skills. It's a question that we get a lot from people, is like, how do you even get going? And, you know, it's no small feat by any stretch. It takes a lot of work and commitment and a lot of different people in the organization. But I'm going to slide it over so you can see them more clearly.
Yeah, hi guys. So I guess the number one thing is when it comes to defining the skills that are required for each level is that it is really hard work. It takes a lot of time, but it is worth every penny. In this case, it probably took us about a year. We came up with the first draft of skills within probably about 6 months. But then it took us a while to kind of refine and make sure that the skills were what we wanted to convey to the whole organization. We knew how many levels we had by our org chart. That pretty much told us we had our levels 1 through 4. We have a split path for our level 4. They can kind of choose 2 different areas. But once we had the levels, it was about, first it was about getting buy-in from our directors and figuring out who we wanted to participate in the process. And so we basically brought all of our directors in. We told them that we wanted to do this. They were very strategic in helping us come up with all of the information. We used sources, like we started off with our own job descriptions, but they weren't detailed enough. We looked online, we referenced the MIT skills matrix. That was a little bit too technical. And then we just did some online searching, and we all got into a room together via a little workshop and really nailed things down. And you know, there were we found that as we were going through, and as we were going through creating these separately, we came back together and there were some duplicate information there. So it was really just kind of combing through, making sure we had the exact skills that we wanted everybody to be working through each discipline. The differences between each level, and Karen, feel free to jump in here, but I can see kind of some basic differences. When someone comes into the organization as a level 1, we really want them to be focusing on the work and really nailing our process down and how we do things. And that's also an opportunity to basically get all of the information from new candidates from them, so that we can use that to see how we can become more efficient with our practices and just be better at what we're doing.
It's a great hiring tool.
Yeah.
So we use it when we're opening a headcount for hiring, it makes it easier as well, because we know right away we're looking for a level 1 candidate, and then everybody who's in our interview cycle understands exactly what we're talking about in terms of the skills that we're looking for. So it's helpful there as well.
Yeah. And our level 2, go ahead.
I probably don't need to go through them all.
Oh, okay. Our salary ranges, we did research there too. We've got a stellar HR person here. She looked at pay scales, she looked at Glassdoor, she looked at LinkedIn. She provided us with the salary ranges once we had the levels worked out, and we approved the salary ranges, and that's what we use today.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's never done. We are constantly reviewing and refining. In fact, we've been growing so much as a company lately, we're really taking this opportunity to go through those skills again and make sure that they're still applicable, and also at the same time making sure that, you know, we're adding things that we may not have included in the beginning. So that is. So
we'll wait for questions from you guys towards the end, and then we can go in lots more detail there. And then so Greg's going to jump in here and just talk a little bit about you know, sort of how this maps to human behavior and how it's different than what we've seen in a lot of organizations. Do you want to go for it, Rick?
Yeah, thank you, Karen. It's great to meet you all. Our approach is essentially a little different than the traditional business consulting. When you think about it, work is done with people and through people. And I know we're automating, but by and large, we're still working with people. And so the question then is, how do we design organizations that are great for people to work in, maximize who they are, that account for their individuality, and that have the structures and the systems in place so that they can both do great work that is sustainable over a long period of time. The reality is the workplace is really changing. As we all know, we've got a massive influx of millennials, technology, speed of communication, even the way that we work now with the complexity, we're creating matrix teams and we're flattening organizations as a result of it. People are working off-site more, they're much more mobile. So the result is it's more difficult to manage. So one recent company we worked with, we asked the question, sort of just a simple one, do you know who your manager is? In a sense, the person that actually you're responsible to and a direct report to. And 20% of the company didn't even know who their who their manager was. 50% didn't know who their manager reported to in the organization. So and it's not their fault necessarily, it's just that we're creating teams and doing work in fundamentally different ways. And the result of that then is creating a company that is both high performing as well as growing and developing your people has become much more difficult than it was in the manufacturing world, say 40 years ago. So the GrowTool fits in that in a fantastic way. The traditional approach is just to redo, for example, a performance review page and ask different questions. But what we're doing when we do that is we're taking basically a 1950s view of people and a 1950s technology, and we're just, in a sense, editing it and trying to reapply it. What the GrowTool is trying to do, and I think does really effectively, and what Karen, as you listen to Karen and Brigitt, what they've done with their company, is that they've adopted a different way of being, a different way of running a company, a different way of engaging people that actually is more attuned to the 21st century rather than the 20th century. So the GrowTool allows us to keep track of that. It creates a database for people. It brings together the two things that people have had a hard time bringing together. One is, how do you create a truly performance-based culture that seeks high performance, efficiency, productivity, all the business metrics that we look for, and yet at the same time has a great deal of empathy for the employees, that wants to see their career develop, that takes an interest in them. So rather than being a negative monitoring device, it's actually a much more positive oriented device that seeks to develop people, create trust, that enters into a covenant with the employee that says, we have your best interests at heart. We really want to see you do great work here. We want to see you thrive as you become part of our community. Yet at the same time, we want to hold you accountable to do the work that we agree that you do at a high level. So we're very excited about it. The foundation of it is research-based. That's what we do at Marigold. We're a bunch of former academic geeks, in a sense, that are really interested in people. And the idea is to bring the best of university research into the marketplace and help companies grow with cutting-edge research. So some of the things we're going to be adding to the tool in the future will include, for example, a culture survey that would be used with Blink. That'll be built into the tool so that the organizations, you'll, on an annual basis, say you can take a full measure of the cultural metrics that actually relate to performance and development. We're going to build in the current cutting edge Big Five or 5-factor personality assessment, which allows you to align your talent. It's no longer just good enough to get good talent in the bus. You actually need to get them on the right seat in the bus and align people and how they're hardwired with the actual roles and functions they have within the organization. And we're going to build an executive dashboard that creates sort of a broad data mix for senior executives so they can immediately have access to the data that's related to the functioning of the organization. So lots going on. It's coming up for sale. We're rolling it out. It'll be available by August. So if you're interested, we'd be more than delighted to talk with you about it going forward. Karen.
Okay. That is it for our deck. There's our beautiful office, and to pull all this off, you also have a beautiful office to go with it, and then people are really happy. Ham, so that's it for our presentation. If you want to open it up to questions, we'd love to take them.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really wonderful. So there's a few here in the queue line. The first one is from Bruce. So he says, I see how the raises are auto-earned. What happens if and when the company can't afford to be so automatically generous? Is management discretion involved?
Yeah, so management discretion is always involved. They still have to make a case for the employee, although it becomes really straightforward when they have the data they can take out of the tool. For us, it's a tough one because for us in a consulting business, we have to keep up with raises. That's why the ranges that Brigitt talked about, the research that we did, we have to fit into those ranges if we're going to stay competitive and hire great people. And as a consulting firm, the only thing we have are great people. And so, we really have to stay in those ranges. And so if we can't, we sort of have bigger problems in terms of our billable rates. They have to go up. The problem that we're having right now in the industry that we're in is the user experience industry is on fire. And so our rates are needing to go up much faster than we ever have in the 18 years that we've been around to keep up with the salaries that are going up, because we've got the Amazons and the Microsofts and every other big consulting agency paying really high salaries. And so in order for us to compete there, our rates have to go up. And so that always feels like a hard pill to swallow, but when you realize that's what the industry will bear, we just have to, everything is moving very quickly. So it's tough. It's the biggest discussion that I have weekly with my CFO is paying for raises. Absolutely.
Can I jump in for a sec? The one thing that's of value in the tool is it's not just the compensation page and link to the skill and the development stuff. What's really great is it also incorporates, because there's more to giving a raise, I think, than just somebody sort of advancing through the skill set and then get automatically promoted. There's the feedback, there's the sort of how they're doing within the firm as a whole, sort of the quality of their work, are they maintaining the standards? And this is also a really important part of the discussion that I think sort of supervisors and managers have with their people. So the skill set advances and they're ready for a raise, but then there are these other sort of intangible elements that actually are included in other dimensions of the data in the tool that also I think provide greater clarity both for the organization and the employee to say, are you ready for the next step?
Great. Thank you for that. I guess another question on the salary piece is, did you decide your salary ranges on geographic locations?
That factors into it for sure. And we have multiple offices now, so that definitely factors into it.
Okay, great. What is the process for certifying individual skills and levels? Are they constantly under revision?
Yes. Yeah, Brigitt, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, just repeat the question one more time.
Yeah, what's the process for certifying individual skills and levels? And are they constantly under revision?
Yeah, so I mean that really boils down to the monthly check-in process. So our managers are checking in with their employees monthly, and if not, sometimes more than that. It really is up to the discretion of the manager and the employee. And so ideally, when they're meeting monthly, they're identifying those skills that they want to be working on, and the manager is helping them to identify the tasks that they can perform on an ongoing basis that will help them check that skill off. It's not about demonstrating whether or not you can do the skill once. It's about demonstrating that you're incorporating that skill into your everyday practice. So it is a constant review.
Great. All right, another one is, Christy says, I love that you acknowledge negativity and build trust with the 5-1 feedback ratio. Do you build in a break to separate the positive and constructive feedback during the year in review meetings with a team member?
No, the idea is that it's going on every day, all day long, and it's just constant. And so it's not a formal structure or setting where the feedback is given, like literally walking down the hallway, hey, I love how you formatted that document. I'm making it up, but the idea is that it's constant. Or, I love how you made that coffee. It doesn't have to be work related even. You're just building trust with somebody. You can like their shoes. That builds trust, that you're paying attention, you're noticing somebody, and you're acknowledging what's important to them, I think is a big part of it. And Rick, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, this is based on Barbara Friedrichsen's work out of Duke, and the research, there's also been some research done in Berkeley that shows that organizations that have a 1-to-1 ratio really underperform because they're focused on problem solving, they tend to have polarization. It's a bit like Congresses right now. 3-to-1, they perform decently, and 5-to-1 is optimal, both in organizations and marriages and relationships and all sorts of stuff. What Karen's getting at is what you're trying to do ultimately is not so much focus on the number, but you're trying to build a culture that is a positive-based culture. In a sense, it's a culture where employees come to work, they feel like the organization is on their side to do great work, and people within, both individually and with teams, are positively supporting each other. So we think like most of the work that we do, we'd say like we hire great people, 95% of what we do probably is of a high level. The actual constructive piece is probably a lot smaller. And what Friedrichsen and them have been able to demonstrate is that we tend not to notice the great stuff. we tend to think that if we want to improve performance, what we want to do is focus on what's going wrong. But positivity is like a soup. It infuses life into the organization so that when it comes up and you have to have the critical conversation, when it happens, people go, I know you like me. I know you like my work. This isn't that big a deal. I just need to improve in this one area. So the organization as a whole, what you're trying to do is build positive structures in the organization so that when the negative really or the constructive piece has to come, that it actually fits within a broader context of that.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, next one. Can the tool accommodate a learning, or I'm sorry, I think a leaning towards teamwork and team goals rather than individual goals and growth?
That's a great question. There, some of the goals and some of the skills within the levels require teamwork to make them happen. And so I think that's the way to get at it. We don't have actual, it's interesting, we don't have goals that a whole team has to accomplish together, other than the work that we do here is project-based. And so in people's day jobs, that's what they do, is work in teams, and they work as a team. And the only way a project is going to be completed is if the teamwork is going well. So for us, that's where that's happening. And then some of the skills are related to how you function on a team. And so I think that's probably the closest that we get to that.
Yeah, and I think that, you could probably structure it by team. It would, your goals or your skills would just be team skills instead of individual skills, but you could certainly put it in that way.
Yeah, and you could have a track that was a team track. That's interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. So Blink UX has a fairly large team compared to other small giants. Based on your experience, is it feasible for a smaller company, let's say 10 employees, to develop a system of this sort?
Oh yeah, why not? We were small ones.
But I wouldn't develop it.
When we got started with this tool, we were only 25 people.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the main thing, is it needed to be scalable so that we could, really continue to apply it as the company got bigger. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think the strength of starting when you're smaller is that it builds the disciplines into the company so that you can actually scale and grow.
Yeah.
If you're 2 people, you still want to have the same disciplines as if you're 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And everything the tool is trying to build into the organization, it forces, in a sense, a high-functioning way of relating to each other that builds the basic disciplines of running a great organization. So, to our mind, the earlier the better. If you're 3 people, 10 people, 25 people, the sooner you can start building these practices into your organization, the healthier you're going to be, and probably the quicker you're going to grow. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think even if you're 10 people, no one wants to fill in an annual review form. I don't think that changed.
Exactly.
Great. And I think we have one more here. So this individual says, I've never heard of bringing personal life into an annual review or a touch point, but it's a great data point that impacts performance. How do you walk the line of what is relevant versus irrelevant in their personal life or their work life, and being careful not to cross any boundaries? And what's sort of appropriate in terms of HR standpoint?
It's up to the individual to decide. So we're not deciding for them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to put in anything that's not, outside of the walls of the office, but we really encourage them to. And I really believe that you have one life and you need to be balanced. And part of that balance includes work. Part of it includes eating right, exercising, sleeping, spending time with your family. And it's part of one being. And so I really try to encourage people that, connect it as best as you can. And it's private. So it's not like it's, some of the things you can share with your manager, but you even don't have to. So.
Mm-hmm. Great.
A quick comment on that one as well. This is part of the massive cultural shift that's occurring right now. The separation of what we call our private and public life began occurring in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And all of a sudden, by the 1930s, you had a clear definition of this is my private life and this is my public life. And work was public. And you never allowed them to combine. With the arrival of the millennials, they saw basically this language of authenticity, wanting to be the same person I am in the different spheres. Millennials are pushing this, and I think it's a really healthy thing. And so what Karen's articulated, you have one life, and if you want balance and you want to do these things, organizations are going to have to catch up to the fact that it's messy, because people's private life really does impact their work life, and their work life really does impact their private life. And the workers nowadays, they want to bring both into the same conversation. So I know it's more difficult in HR. HR has been too aligned with the legal department at times sometimes. And there's sort of a risk aversion that goes along with that. But employees are really demanding that these two conversations be brought together. So I know it's more messy, but in some ways it's more realistic, and it touches deeply at the elements. If you want high performance, very often those elements are in their private life, just the way it is.
And it's interesting what you just said in terms of the flip side of that too, is if somebody feels valued and they had a great day at work and they know how they've contributed, they're going to go home feeling better. Yeah. And so, my theory is if somebody goes home and they feel good, they're going to be better family members, they're going to be better neighbors, they're going to be better friends, and so that they can, in the reverse, have a big impact in their personal life based on how their work life is going. And so, the connection goes really both ways.
Okay, well that's it for this one. Check out more Fishbowls exclusively for the Small Giants community at smallgiants.org.